MeMonster.
Starring at the busy streets of Ashton City, outside of Moonlight Mercenary Group headquarters, two individuals stood on the stairs that led all the way up to the building. "Thank you for coming." Puff. Puffing a mouthful of smoke, Leopold nonchalantly stared at the people below him. Glancing at Small Snake from the corner of his eyes, he slowly said, "No problem, I had nothing to do anyways." "Yes. Tossing the cigarette in his mouth to the ground, Leopold stepped on it. Glancing at Small Snake, he asked, "So what did you call me here for?" Smiling, Small Snake took out a contract from a small black briefcase in his hands and handed it to Leopold. Without skipping a beat, he went straight to the point. "I would like to hire you." Raising his brow, Leopold took the contract from Small Snake's hands. "Oh, hire me." Scanning the document in his hands, Leopold's brows couldn't help but jump up and down. Glancing back at Small Snake with a hint of doubt, he couldn't help but ask, "Is this offer real? 100,000 U a month? I am not reading this wrongly, right?" Smiling, Small Snake nodded his head. "Our leader has specifically asked for you, and that's the price he is willing to offer for your services." "May? Yes. Why?" "Don't ask me, I am just following orders." Though he said that, Small Snake couldn't help but start to understand why Ren wanted to recruit him. As Small Snake stood next to Leopold, although at first glance Leopold may come across as a lazy middle-aged man, as he stood next to him, Small Snake noticed the unwavering determination that decorated his face. Moreover, the way he carried himself as well as how his deep black eyes added with his dignified aura made it seem like he was in command of everything. This proved to Small Snake that Leopold was an experienced man. He could tell from first glance that he had been through a lot of setbacks throughout his life. Even Small Snake, who had met a lot of people in his past, couldn't help but feel that there was something different about this man. Though his presence wasn't overbearing like some of the people he met, he unknowingly felt respect for the man, equivalent to that of a soldier to his own general. "So that's why." Black. As a slight smile appeared on Small Snake's face, snapping him out of his thoughts, Leopold lightly smacked the contract on Small Snake's chest. "Sorry, but I will have to refuse." "Hi." Opening his eyes wide, Small Snake couldn't help but look at Leopold in confusion. According to his estimate, he was currently earning 20,000 U per month. His offer of 100,000 U a month was 5 times what he was currently earning. Moreover, from what he read, he wasn't even treated well here. Why would he reject him? "May I ask why you are rejecting my offer?" Smiling slightly, glancing at the papers that were now back in Small Snake's hands, Leopold couldn't help but ask back, "Have you seen the offer?" "Yes." "And you think I would accept it just like that?" Opening his mouth, a bitter smile appeared on Small Snake's face. Glancing at Leopold, he said, "You think we're a fraudulent group, don't you?" Nodding his head, Leopold rummaged through his pocket and took out another cigarette from his pocket. Bingo. Flick flick. Puff. Lighting up the cigarette, taking a big puff while staring in the distance, Leopold exhaled. How can I rank mercenary group offer me such a high salary out of nowhere? At first, I was indeed tempted, but you see, I am not looking to quit my job to join another one that has an uncertain future. Moreover, your group doesn't even have a mission to their name. I've got a family to feed, you see. Puff. Pausing, taking another puff of the cigarette, Leopold exhaled and stared at the smoke floating in the air. "How do you expect me to take this offer seriously?" Pursing his lips, Small Snake sighed. Leopold had a point. He had thought of this point before, but he really couldn't do anything about it. After all, as of right now, there were only 2 people in the group. Still, Small Snake wasn't a man to give up. He had already talked with Ren before, and in case the said situation arises, he would offer him one final offer. If he rejected this, then it was better to look elsewhere. 1 million U direct payment now, plus 100,000 U per month salary. Everything written under a contract to prove legitimation year 2,200,000 U. As Small Snake proposed this offer, he couldn't help but feel a slight pain in his chest. We were talking about 2,200,000 U, not some lump change. Still, although they offered a lot of money with what they had made from the Bull's Wrath incident, they had somehow managed to make enough money to not bleed over this matter. Moreover, Ren told him that money wouldn't be an issue in the future and that this investment was worth the cost. Thus, trusting Ren, Small Snake decided to go all out. TSSSS. Dropping the cigarette on the ground, Leopold couldn't help but be stupefied by the offer. 2,200,000 U, that's like 9 years of my salary in just 1 year. Caressing his unkempt beard, glancing at Small Snake, Leopold smiled. You've got my interest. Monday Lock Class 825. Sitting in my usual seat, I propped up my chin with my hand. Compared to my usual lazy appearance, today I was particularly excited about the lecture. A good show is about to await me. All right, please sit down, class is about to begin. Walking in the class, holding onto his files with his right hand, Gilbert motioned for everyone in the class to sit down. Arriving at the podium, placing his stuff down, Gilbert looked at everyone in the classroom. After everyone stopped talking, smiling slightly, Gilbert started speaking. In today's lecture, we will be speaking about ranks and what they mean. As most of you know, ranks are indexes that we use to measure the average strength of a person. Ranks range from G all the way to SSS. Some say that there might even be a rank higher than that, but no one is sure about that as the current strongest humans alive have only reached as far as SS rank. As Gilbert spoke, I mostly ignored most of the stuff that he said. I honestly knew most of the stuff already, but that was beside the point as I was currently waiting for something else and finally, 30 minutes into the lecture, the moment I've been waiting for finally happened. Does anyone have any questions with regards to what I just explained? Immediately after Gilbert said that, multiple hands shot up in the air. Pointing towards one of the girls sitting on the same side as me, Gilbert said, "You over there, what's your question?" Being picked, sitting up straight, the young girl looked at Gilbert with eyes of pure adoration. Clearing her throat, she said, "Sir, is it possible for an individual to fight against a higher-ranked individual?" Smiling at the girl's question, Gilbert answered, "Good question. Yes, it is indeed possible. However, those cases are extremely rare and can only be achieved by those who have pure bloodlines, as they are the only people capable of such feats." As soon as Gilbert started speaking about bloodlines, the faces of some of the students in the class couldn't help but turn ugly. Trying my best to hide the smile on my face, I couldn't help shake my head. To think that Gilbert would try to spread his faction's ideologies in the middle of the lecture. It was technically not allowed, but considering Gilbert's backing, he could do as he pleased. As long as he didn't cross the line, he was allowed to do whatever he wanted. And so, in case you want to defeat a higher-ranked opponent, you must have a superior bloodline that would grant you great talent and skills. Satisfied with his answer, Gilbert looked at the young lady who had asked the question and said, "Is that enough to answer your query?" However, pausing mid-sentence and pointing towards a certain individual on the right side of the classroom, Gilbert raised his brow. "Oh, it seems like someone disagrees with my statement." Being pointed at, Kevin glanced at Gilbert in confusion. "Me? Yes, you seem to be dissatisfied with my statement." Glancing at Gilbert and noticing the provocative, mocking look on his face, Kevin took a deep breath and spoke his mind. "Altaf difficult. I believe that lower-ranked people can indeed put up a fight against someone whose rank is higher. Moreover, I don't believe bloodline or lineage has anything to do with that, as there is no proof to back up such claims." He was indeed dissatisfied with what Gilbert has said. Altaf bloodlines could indeed help create children with higher talent. It meant nothing. As long as one put in enough work, dedication, and luck, Kevin felt that even people with normal families could beat higher-ranked opponents. Covering his mouth, Gilbert's body shook. Glancing at Kevin, Gilbert couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Ha ha ha, that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. To think that despite you being ranked 1 in your year, you were this ignorant." Shrugging his shoulders, not minding Gilbert's attitude one bit, Kevin sat back down. "I still stand by my point." Stopping himself from laughing, as if he had come up with a brilliant idea, mysteriously glancing at Kevin, he asked, "How about this? From what I've heard, you're AD ranked, right?" Suddenly being asked about his rank, Kevin frowned. What did that have to do with anything they were talking about? In the end, noticing Gilbert's mocking look, Kevin nodded his head. "Yes." Smiling widely, Gilbert took out a small black spherical object from his dimensional space and showed it to everyone. Altaf, I am currently B ranked. This item that I am currently holding right now is called the Suppressor. It is an item that my father specifically gave me and has the special ability to suppress my strength to a rank I want for 30 minutes. Though it won't allow me to jump to higher ranks, it helps me reach lower levels without batting an eye. Clenching onto the sphere, Gilbert provocatively looked at Kevin. How about this? You and I fight, and I'll suppress my strength all the way down to D rank exactly the same as yours. Although I indeed have more experience than you, weren't we just talking about a lower rank beating a higher rank? Since you're so adamant about saying that I am wrong, prove it to me. Show me that bloodlines don't matter. As soon as Gilbert finished speaking, a series of gasps immediately erupted in the classroom as numerous gazes concentrated between Gilbert and Kevin. To think that Gilbert had openly challenged Kevin in the middle of the class, such a thing caused everyone in the class to be stupefied. A professor challenging a student, such a thing was unheard of before. Frowning, Kevin seriously looked at Gilbert. After a couple of seconds, nodding his head, he agreed. All right, I hope you won't regret your decision, Professor. Hearing Kevin's agreement, Gilbert laughed loudly, believing that Kevin was merely trying to save face. With a mocking smile on his face, he walked out of the hall as his laughter, which was tinged with a hint of amusement and ridicule, resounded across the halls of the building. Very well, everyone follow me to the training grounds. I really want to see how Kevin will be able to prove me wrong. Lock Section G Arena Grounds. Many practice platforms stood in the practice grounds, while at the top, numerous youths excitedly shouted as they gazed at the youths sparring against each other. The arena grounds, which was in the same building as the training grounds, was one of the most famous places within the academy, as youths sparring against each other could be seen at any time of the day. Usually in the arena, numerous youths fiercely punching and kicking each other as they tried their best to beat their opponents appeared to be a common sight, a rather imposing one at that. There was no lack of pretty girls in the platforms above, resulting in the boys below fighting with even more enthusiasm, hopping to catch some of the girls' interest as they basked in the limelight of the fight. However, that was not the case today. At the moment, almost every gaze within the arena grounds was focused around two individuals standing on top of one of the platforms. No matter if they were boys or girls, their sights were transfixed on the two individuals at the center of the platforms. On the right, a young man with dirty blonde hair proudly stood as he looked down on his opponent. Wearing a black professor uniform with a gentle scholarly air around him, Gilbert stood at the center of the ring. On the opposite side of him, wearing an azure blue lock uniform, an extremely handsome youth with black hair and red eyes solemnly stared at Gilbert opposite to him. When both Kevin and Gilbert walked into the platforms, news of their bout had probably already spread everywhere, hence why with each passing minute the stands on the training grounds were filled with even more people. What Professor Gilbert is going to fight against a first year? It's true, according to sources, it seems like the student he is fighting is Kevin Voss, the talented first year that managed to become D rank at the age of 16. Yes, I've also heard that Professor Gilbert will fight him whilst suppressing his strength all the way to D rank, the same rank as him. Leaning on one of the handrails of the arena, hearing the discussions of some of the students present, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. I of course knew this was going to happen. This was the event that truly created hatred between Gilbert and Kevin. It was the moment in which the two would finally cease all pretenses and officially became at odds against each other. This event was the reason why I decided to delay all of my other tasks and directly talk to Kevin with regards to bringing me to Amora. I believe that after this event, Kevin would without a doubt agree to meet me on Saturday. Smiling slightly, glancing at Kevin's and Gilbert's figure below me, I relaxed and waited for the match to start. As I watched the both of them standing off against each other, I couldn't help but think to myself, I'm really curious as to how a fight I wrote looks like. Glancing at Kevin with a proud smile on his face, Gilbert mockingly said, Are you ready? Stretching his arms and legs, Kevin's face became solemn as he nodded his head. Yes. All right, since I am older than you, I'll grant you the first move. If you manage to land a punch on me, it'll be considered my defeat. As he spoke to Kevin atop the stage, Gilbert merely chuckled as he stared at the audience. No matter what they said, after today, his vicious beating of Kevin would without a doubt spread throughout the whole lock tomorrow. Such news would without a doubt deal a huge blow to Kevin's confidence as well as increase the popularity of his faction. Moreover, it also served as a warning towards those that were not a part of their faction. This is what happens if you mess with us. Though he was a professor using the power of his faction, Gilbert made it seem like Kevin was the one who had challenged him. This way, once he won, he could humiliate Kevin even more. Just imagining it put a smile on Gilbert's face. Beckoning Kevin with his right hand, Gilbert said, "Come, if you insist." Powerfully stomping his right foot on the ground, unsheathing his sword, Kevin's body shot out like an arrow. A red hue covered the body of his sword. Kevin's attack was filled with power as it split the air around it. If Kevin hit a boulder, he would reduce it into powder within a matter of seconds. Soon after, a couple of seconds after he propelled his body forward, Kevin hacked forward. Clank! Extending his right hand forward, Kevin's sword connected with Gilbert's hand as a muffled sound rang out and dust flew everywhere. A couple of seconds after, as the dust died down, Gilbert's figure holding onto Kevin's sword with 2 fingers could be seen. How did he do that? Watching the scene from the stands, some of the students couldn't help but be stupefied. Although they knew Gilbert was capable, they didn't know he was that capable. Even some of the more experienced students couldn't help but have a solemn expression as they recalled Kevin's attack. Fast, powerful, and precise. Something extremely hard to block, and yet, casually holding onto Kevin's sword with his fingers, Gilbert seemed to be utterly unfazed. Flick. Not bad for someone like you. Flicking Kevin's sword away, Kevin took a few steps back to distance himself. His face was incomparably solemn. Although some people in the stands might have not understood what had happened, Kevin understood perfectly. As soon as he attacked, coating his fingers with mana, Gilbert managed to precisely pinpoint the center of gravity of his sword, and with a subtle twist of his finger, he managed to make the sword lose all of its momentum. Such skill required a high degree of control of mana as well as an understanding of swords. Staring at Gilbert leisurely standing in the distance, Kevin knew that he might bit more than he could chew on. Yet a smile still appeared on his face. What fun is there if I win easily? Stomping on the ground, a small crater appeared beneath Kevin's feet as he propelled his body forwards, in Gilbert's direction. Feudal. Easily parrying Kevin's blows with one hand, Gilbert leisurely stood in the same position. No matter where Kevin's sword disappeared, he would always easily find the true sword intent and parry it. Glancing at Kevin with a smirk on his face, he couldn't but mock him. Is that all your strength amounts to? Shaking his head with his other hand, Gilbert covered his mouth as he yawned. If so, we should probably call it quits, as I am already. Just as Gilbert was about to end things, noticing something, Gilbert looked at Kevin with a little bit of shock. Appearing from Gilbert's left side, Kevin stabbed his sword towards Gilbert's head. However, just as Gilbert was about to block, while still in the air as if the air was tangible, Kevin stepped in the air and forcefully redirected his body in another direction, catching Gilbert off guard. Feudal tricks. Quickly adjusting, Gilbert repositioned his right foot and precisely twisted his body in a way that he was now face to face with Kevin. It seems like this is high. Just as Gilbert was about to finish Kevin with an upper hook to his stomach, noticing Kevin's smirk, a bad feeling arose in his heart. And his feelings were true. Overdrive. Those were the last words he heard before Kevin's figure completely disappeared from his sight and a strong force appeared on his right cheek. Taking 2 steps back in disbelief, Gilbert couldn't help but touch his cheek, which was now stinging. Breaking Gilbert out of his stupor was Kevin's cold voice. I've won. As Gilbert glanced next to him, Kevin's fist was only a few centimeters away from his face. Moreover, to make things worse, on Kevin's other hand was his sword, which he didn't use to attack. Had he used his sword, Gilbert might have actually gotten injured. Realizing this fact, Gilbert could only blankly stand there at a loss. The originally noisy surroundings of the arena turned deathly silent at the moment. Numerous people, be it students or professors, all stared at Kevin in disbelief. No one could have ever imagined Kevin to actually land a blow against Gilbert. No one. Why, you bastard. You. Recollecting himself with an enraged roar, a yellow hue emerged from Gilbert's body. Grabbing onto Kevin's left fist that had connected to his face, thick veins protruded from the top of Gilbert's forehead as he couldn't help but glare at Kevin. Soon his aura swiftly rose as the dust under his feet swept outwards as mana poured into his body like crazy. His clothes started to flutter at the moment. D play C play C play B play B. In his enraged state, Gilbert's rank rose dramatically, from D all the way to B rank. Even from the stands, everyone could feel Gilbert's rapidly soaring aura. The aura was so overbearing that some of the weaker students couldn't help but sit down. Staring at Kevin's figure next to him, Gilbert roared at Kevin. You dare! As he shouted, the 5 fingers on his right hand were tightly clenched into a fist. While still holding onto Kevin with his left hand, Gilbert's fist traveled towards Kevin's abdominal area, creating a whistling sound as the air around the fist split apart. PHU. Noticing the fist headed in his direction towards his stomach, Kevin could only helplessly watch it connect to his body. No matter how much he tried to break free, he couldn't break free from Gilbert's grip. Stop. However, just as Kevin was about to despair, an enraged roar that shook the whole stadium resounded across the space. Soon after, tangible purple energy appeared in the area where Gilbert's fist was headed. Sadly, because the caster was too far, it only served as a small shield that could only reduce the power of the fist. Puff. Bang. Soon Gilbert's fist fully connected with Kevin's body and, like a broken kite, Kevin's body flew all the way to the other side of the arena as his body crashed against the walls of the arena. The extent of his injuries was unknown. How dare you, Gilbert! Floating in the air, an enormous purple hue covered Donna's body as it threatened to swallow the whole arena grounds. Staring at Kevin's passed-out figure in the distance, the hue around Donna intensified even more as the area around Gilbert froze. To think you would stoop low enough to actually seriously injure a student just because you couldn't accept your loss. To think you would stoop low enough to actually seriously injure a student just because you couldn't accept your loss. HMPH. Under Donna's overbearing pressure, Gilbert firmly stood his ground. No matter what he did, he believed that as long as he didn't kill Kevin, he would be finished. He wasn't wrong. Glancing at the instructors in the stands, Gilbert knew that if had stepped over his bounds, they would have all interfered. Seeing their lack of action meant one thing: he was still in the clear. Smiling to himself, Gilbert couldn't help but think, they don't have the guts to do anything to me. Noticing the smirk on Gilbert's face, incensed, Donna shouted out loud, Answer me. Glancing at Donna with a smirk on his face whilst raising his voice, he answered, What is there to answer? I let the emotions get the best of me, and I went overboard. Turning around towards the audience, Gilbert bowed down and apologized to everyone. As he spoke, his voice would occasionally tremble, making it seem like he was trying his best to hold his emotions back. I am sorry you had to see Emmy in such a sorry state. When I saw Kevin, I was reminded of a friend of mine in the past and lost control of my emotions. Sorry. As soon as Gilbert's words died down, after a couple of seconds of silence, a wave of support from the crowd came crashing down. We understand. Yeah, it was just a mistake. It's not like Kevin died or anything like that. Sitting down on the stands, I shook my head. Although it looked like the crowd was supporting Gilbert, in reality, they were either people from his faction or people looking to curry favor with them. Some of the people in the crowd were also those that hated Kevin due to how outstanding he was in the end. No one particularly cared about what happened to Kevin. Bullshit. Standing in the air, Donna's enraged shout shook the whole place. Pointing at Gilbert, the purple hue around her intensified even more as the area around Gilbert froze. KHA. How shameless can you be? Conglomerating mana into her eyes, Donna prepared to use one of her skills against Gilbert. However, right before she could use the skill, multiple instructors shot from the stand and stopped right before her. Donna, stop. Instructor Donna, please calm yourself down. Please don't do this, Instructor Donna. Staring at the instructors before her in disgust, the purple hue around her didn't decrease one bit. In fact, it intensified. As her clothes fluttered in the air with her shining amethyst eyes, she stared at everyone before saying, "Good, good, good. Is this how low our academy has fallen, only interfering when Gilbert is in danger, but not doing anything when he goes berserk like he had done with Kevin a couple of seconds ago?" Under Donna's overbearing pressure, the instructors all tried their best to withstand the pressure as they tried to calm her down. "Yes, we saw, but Instructor Donna, please look around you, please calm down and let's talk in a more private place." Pointing towards the crowd, one of the instructors couldn't help but say, "What?" Frowning, Donna looked around her and that's where she saw it. Everyone within the crowd staring at her with a mixture of different emotions displayed on their face: awe, fear, and surprise. All sorts of emotions appeared on the many students below her. In the stands, some of the students were sweating profoundly as they breathed heavily due to the residual magical power emanating from Donna. "Yo." Taking a deep breath, Donna retrieved her power and glared at Gilbert. "Just because I'm withdrawing doesn't mean I'm letting this go." Feeling the pressure around them dissipate, some of the instructors couldn't help but sigh in relief as they thanked her. "Thank you, Donna. Thank you. HMPH." Snorting, Donna took one last look at Gilbert before slowly descending from the air and making her way towards Kevin, who was currently being treated by some of the nurses. "I guess the show's over." Watching Donna making her way towards Kevin, I stood up and prepared to leave. The fight went exactly as I had written. It wasn't a bad match per se, but in the end, it wasn't really that entertaining. It didn't take a rocket scientist to decipher the reason as to why Gilbert lost. The reason why he lost was simply because he was too hellbent on humiliating Kevin, thus becoming careless. With Kevin using overdrive in the precise moment where Gilbert was most vulnerable, Gilbert, caught off guard, couldn't defend himself and thus resulted in his loss. Typical scenario, if I had to say. "Oh well." Briefly glancing at Kevin, who was currently in a stretcher, tended by multiple nurses, I followed the crowd outside of the arena. "I hope to see you soon, Kevin." A red ecliptical sun shone down upon a land engulfed in flames. Screams of terror resounded throughout the air as buildings continuously crumbled. Rumbled. The surroundings were in absolute mayhem as the flames that burnt everything down seemed to endlessly burn. What used to be a regular peaceful day in a small village not so far from Ashton City transformed into a hellish scene. Humongous creatures with enormous wings and devilish smiles stood in the air as they haughtily watched some humans burn down everything below them. The scene below them was the embodiment of desperation. Running along the crumbling roads in hellish flames, a couple carrying with them a small child desperately looked left and right in hopes of not catching anyone's attention. "Huff huff honey, quick over here." Turning left of a building, carrying a 5-year-old child in his arms, the male beckoned for his wife to follow him. Soon after, spotting a small house in the distance, the couple quickly made their way there. Clank. Using his foot, the male broke through a wooden door that led to the small house and promptly hid inside of the house. Placing the child down, the male put his finger on his mouth and seriously looked at the kid. "Huff huff, make sure you don't make a sound." "Dad, what's going on?" "SHHHH, please just remain quiet here, okay?" Covering the mouth of the 5-year-old child with tears streaming down the side of her cheeks, the woman softly said, "Please don't make a sound." Seeing how serious his parents' faces were, the kid nodded his little head and remained quiet as he laid in his mother's warm embrace. Like that, for the next 5 minutes, absolute silence prevailed the surroundings. However, the silence did not last for long. Boom! Startling everyone, a loud explosion resounded near the house they were in. The windows of the house subsequently shattered due to the aftereffects of the shock. "Get down." Covering both the child and the woman with his body, the male ducked down. "KHHH. A couple of seconds after the explosion rang, a constant ringing sound rang inside of everyone's ears. Struggling, the back of the male was now dyed in red as blood and glass shards appeared on his back. H1E. Trembling, noticing the situation, the wife couldn't help but cover her mouth. Trying her best to not make a sound, she gently caressed her husband's cheeks as hot tears streamed down her cheeks. "It's okay, I." Just as the male was about to reassure his wife that he was okay, startling them was the sound of incoming footsteps. Opening his eyes wide, bearing through the pain in his back, he quickly shoved his wife away as he shouted, "Quickly run, I'll hold him back." "No, Jonathan." With a look of grief on her face, the wife tried to protest, but she was promptly shoved by her husband away. "Quick, go." After hesitating for a second without looking back, the wife with the child in her hands ran out of the house. "Kukuku, what have we got here?" Soon after the woman and the child left, appearing from the other side of the door, a young man with long blonde hair appeared. Glaring at the young man with a thick red hue around his body, Jonathan screamed as he shouted, "Die, you bastard!" Clank. Entering another house, the woman looked around for anything to hide and soon spotted a small trapdoor. "Yes." Clank. Opening the trapdoor, she was soon startled when she noticed that the space beneath the trapdoor could only fit one small child. However, instead of despair, a look of relief appeared on the woman's face. With a look of determination, she placed the child inside of the small compartment. "Get in here." Though the child tried to protest as he didn't want to be separated from his mother's warm embrace, shaking her head and placing her finger on her mouth, she softly said, "Here, hide over here. No matter what you hear, don't make a sound, please. Even if you don't see us, please don't make a single sound. Mom will go to daddy now, okay?" "But no." Staring at his mother, the child tried to speak. However, placing her hand on her child's mouth, she shook her head and pleaded, "Please." With streams falling down his cheeks, the child eventually nodded his head. Although he didn't understand what was going on, he had remained quiet the whole time. He wanted to cry so many times, but as he watched the raw emotions in his parents' faces as they ran through the streets, he knew that he could only firmly hold his tears back. Smiling at the young boy, the woman gently caressed his cheek before saying one last heartful goodbye. "Thank you, and I love you." Clank. Soon after closing the trapdoor, the kid's vision turned dark. Thereafter, a couple of minutes after the trapdoor closed, muffled explosions rang out not so far from where he was. This continued for a couple of minutes before stopping. Soon after, deathly silence prevailed in the surroundings. Crouching down, the young kid covered both his ears with his hands as tears continuously streamed down his cheeks. "Mom, did he please come back?" "Huff." Abruptly waking up, Kevin heavily gulped for air as he tightly clenched onto the white clothes on his body. Feeling a damp sensation below him, Kevin noticed that the bedsheets of the bed he was on were currently soaked in his sweat. "Aw, shit." Covering his eyes, Kevin recalled the faint memories of the time he had lost everything. The day where he lost his parents. At that time, he could only powerlessly watch as his parents sacrificed their lives for him, although he had a hunch that they would never come back to him, still hoped. As a 5-year-old back then, he waited inside of the dark place for hours to no end. He desperately waited for his parents to come back and pick him up. However, sadly, the ones that found him weren't his parents. That feeling. The feeling he had thought he would never feel again resurfaced as he remembered watching Gilbert's fist heading in his direction. He was totally helpless at that time. If not for someone's timely intervention, he would have seriously been injured. "You need to be stronger." Clenching his fists tightly, Kevin wanted to get stronger. The powerlessness he faced against Gilbert and back then didn't want to feel that way ever again. As Kevin tried his best to calm himself down, he couldn't help but recall a conversation he had a couple of days ago. "Didn't I tell you I wanted to make a deal with you?" Recalling those words, Kevin took a deep breath. "Who?" After a while, clenching his teeth tightly, Kevin came up with an answer. "Never again do I want to experience this feeling again, ever again." Which one? Inside my dorm room, leisurely laying down on my bed, I scrolled through a long list of products displayed on my tablet. 2 days have passed since Kevin's incident, and by now, Kevin should already be back in his own room with only minor injuries on his body. And exactly like in the story, the events that had transpired between Gilbert and Kevin spread throughout the whole academy like wildfire. Kevin challenged Gilbert and got into an accident during the fight. That's the version of the story that was currently being spread across the academy. Although a lot of students were present during the fight because of blood supremacy status, no one dared to refute the real happenings of the events. Moreover, all the videos that were posted online with regards to the events would quickly disappear as fast as they were uploaded. In the end, Kevin's reputation dropped whilst Gilbert's remained the same. Either way, that was beside the point. As I already knew this was going to happen, I wasn't really shocked by the happenings. A more pressing matter was currently awaiting me. Scrolling through my tablet, I was currently on a website called World Market, the biggest online marketing shop in the human domain, sort of like Amazon or eBay back on Earth in my previous world. The products that they sold ranged from combat suits, potions, herbs, artifacts, and basically anything that you could think of. If you wanted something, chances were that World Market had it. Where is ITMA herbs and potions? Scrolling through the different categories on their website, I soon clicked on the herbs and potions section. Soon after I pressed on that section, an endless row of products presented itself on the webpage. The list went on and on and on. It was practically endless. Now, why was I looking through this section? The answer was simple: I needed to increase my rank as soon as possible. This was especially so considering that I was about to embark on a dangerous mission with Kevin. Imora aside, the location of where the Levisha style was located was in fact inside of a D-ranked dungeon. Although I already had plans with regard to how I was going to approach the dungeon, I felt that I still needed to increase my strength. You could never be too careless in such dangerous environments. If I had to say something about my current strength, it would be that it was inadequate. Thus, knowing this fact, I had no other choice but to look towards the World Market in hopes of finding something to aid me in my quest of finding something that could boost my strength. I refrained from using the website in the past because I was poor. After all, each of the products listed on that site sold for millions of U. Fortunately, as I had saved enough money, I could now take a proper look at the website and see if there was anything useful. This time I had a clear goal. Find something that could increase my rank from F+ to E. Let's skip potions and directly go to natural treasure / herbs. Yup, let's go with the E and F ranging here. As I looked through the long list of items using advanced search, I narrowed down my findings to F and E rank and chose the natural treasure section. The reason why I chose natural treasure herbs rather than potions was simply it was cheaper. And there was a good reason for that. For one, depending on the potency of the herb, they couldn't be taken back to back as the medical properties would linger in the human system for quite a while. Usually, 1 year would be the most optimal time to take another herb. However, stronger ones may require even more time to fully digest. Secondly, compared to potions, which required a highly skilled person to carefully distill and mix the different types of herbs, consuming natural resources required none of that work. This also explained why upon ingestion, someone would feel unbearable pain course throughout their body. They weren't made to be consumed by humans. Either way, pretty much only the richest people could afford to use potions instead of herbs, hence why there was still a market for them. And lastly, they required an inhuman level of willpower. Because of how dense the mana contained within them was, if not careful, someone could find themselves losing their mind due to the sheer amount of pain that they experienced as they ingested the herb. This was primarily why people tended to avoid herbs and chose potions whose effects were much milder. It just wasn't for the faint of heart. Sigh. What other choice do I have? Sighing out loud, I couldn't help but mumble to myself as I stared at the long list of herbs on my phone. Since I couldn't afford an advanced level potion, I could only go for herbs. Like they all say, beggars can't be choosers. Actually, how much do I have? Frowning slightly, taking out my phone, I quickly opened my bank app and checked my bank account. Student Ren Dover. Age 16. Balance 38,634,070 U. Withdraw deposit. Around 38 million yuha. Taken aback, I couldn't help but be surprised by the amount of money I had in my bank account. Though I knew I had a lot, I didn't expect it to be that much. Moreover, this was excluding the amount that I had put as a budget for the mercenary group. After short-selling Bull's Wrath stock, I made a lot of money. On the topic of Bull's Wrath, surprisingly, they managed to pick themselves up and have allied themselves with another gold-ranked guild not far from where they were. Right now it was Sword of Light and Luxius versus Bullswrath and the other gold-ranked guild. That's the current talk of the Northern District. Fortunately, I had already completed the transaction before any of this happened, else I would've lost a lot of possible profit. Maybe I can actually afford an advanced potion. With the amount of money I had, I could definitely afford to buy an advanced potion, but after a bit of thought, I discarded such a notion. Looking through the prices of the advanced potion section, the cheapest potion that could help me rank up totaled a whopping 35 million U. Yeah, a bit too pricey. Thus, without hesitation, I closed the tab and quickly went back to look at the herbs section. Now what should I buy? Tituala flower. A flower that grows in high altitudes and contains a high concentration of mana. Upon ingestion for a brief period of time, the pores of the user will open up, granting maximum mana absorption rate. Warning: only use if you are at least F-ranked, as death may be possible if a lower-ranked individual consumes such natural treasure. Price: 12 million U. Blood Ginseng. Ginseng that is soaked in the blood of E-ranked beast red-eyed chimera. Under the influence of its blood, the ginseng's gentle properties along with the chimera's chaotic properties created a perfect balance between the two polar opposite energies. Through the perfect balance of those properties, users may be able to increase rank if they can absorb the energy trapped within the ginseng. Warning: only use if you are at least F-ranked, as death may be possible if a lower-ranked individual consumes such natural treasure. Price: 15,800,000 U. Black Lotus. A lotus that grows. TSSSS. Hissing slightly, I couldn't help but scrunch up my face as I looked at the prices of some of the herbs listed. Though I knew that the prices would have been high, they were still far more than I had expected. Shaking my head, I looked back at the list. Now which one should I choose? I had to choose carefully. There was another thing I forgot to mention when talking about ranking up through external aid. And that there was a chance of failure. Though not big, it was still there. Therefore, I had to choose something that gave me the highest chance of success. Tituala flower and blood ginseng. Those were the two natural treasures that had caught my interest. The Tituala flower, with its gentle and soothing properties, would definitely hurt a lot less compared to the blood ginseng. However, after a bit of thinking, I chose the blood ginseng. The reason was simple. Lower chance of failure. Though the pain would be far worse than the Tituala flower, to me none of that mattered. I couldn't afford to throw 12 million U for nothing. I may as well spend an extra 3 million U to get a higher chance of ranking up. After all, I couldn't afford to fail. With each passing day, I realized that I was still too weak. No matter how much I tried to catch up to Kevin and the others, I was still not fast enough. They were prodigies themselves. They weren't just going to wait for me to catch up. I had to take matters into my own hand on thus. Click. Pressing onto the card on the top right of my screen, I quickly purchased the blood ginseng. Taking a deep breath as I watched the transaction go through, I couldn't help but softly mumble. Time to rank up. Hats off to technology. Re-up. A couple of hours after I placed my order in World Market, my package already arrived in front of my dorm room. I don't know how they managed to send me the package so fast, but who was I to complain? Whoa. Ripping the package open, nestled in between a couple of styrofoam beans was a red ginseng root that rhythmically pulsated a red hue. Taking the ginseng out, I couldn't help but tilt my head in confusion. How am I supposed to take this? Do I just eat it, or do I put it in a medical bath? Carefully placing the ginseng on my table, I quickly looked for instructions on what to do with the ginseng. After all, I wasn't just going to recklessly eat this when I had no idea whether that was the right thing to do. Opening my tablet, I quickly looked through all of the information regarding the blood ginseng. No need for a medical bath, and just eating it raw is okay. Moreover, I shouldn't steam it as there's a chance it might lose some of its medical properties. Reading the instructions on the web, my face couldn't help but twist lightly. Though I had never eaten ginseng before, looking at it on my table, it reminded me of ginger. And I hated ginger. Let's not bitch about this for any longer and just think of it as a small sacrifice for strength. With the most twisted face I could muster, holding the ginseng by the tip of my fingers, I slowly placed it in my mouth. Right after placing the ginseng in my mouth, taking my first bite, an earthy and bitter taste invaded the tonsils of my tongue. So bitter, at least it's not as bad as ginger. Chewing onto the ginseng, I soon noticed that although it was bitter, if I concentrated hard enough, I could taste a slightly sweet aftertaste. Though it wasn't very sweet, it was still something. Yep, it's starting. Chewing on the ginseng for a couple of seconds, I soon swallowed it. Thereafter, I felt a hot sensation in my stomach area. Oof. Soon after, as if all the pores of my body were stretched to the maximum, I felt the mana in my surroundings gather towards my body at an alarming rate. It soon entered my system and headed towards the energy that came from the ginseng. The mana from the atmosphere added with the chaotic energy within my body due to the ginseng soon mixed and created a ball of pure energy that coursed through my body. As if a dam had broken, the energy shot straight into every fiber of my body, resulting in my skin turning red. Steam slowly rose from my body as green veins protruded from my skin as they constantly wiggled around. Frowning hard, I clenched my teeth and suppressed the pain that was coursing through my body. It felt as though 1,000 pins were puncturing my veins. The pain was excruciating. Like that, for the next 15 minutes, I endured an almost unbearable amount of pain. It felt as though I was being skinned and burned alive. Soon after 15 minutes of pure hell, the pain finally died down. Shortly after the pain disappeared, a wave of euphoria washed over my body as I felt my body go through a metamorphosis. My already toned muscles became firmer. All of my senses enhanced dramatically, and the mana capacity in my body increased multiple folds. If before I could only use the first and second movement of the keiki style once or twice, now I could use it up to 5 times without a problem. Exhaling, turbid air escaped from my mouth. I was very tempted to test my strength, but I refrained from doing so. Glancing at the corner of my room where a deep gash appeared on the wall, my mouth couldn't help but twitch. Should definitely get that fixed. Rubbing my nose, I quickly checked my status window. I was curious about something. Status. Name Ren Dover. Rank E. Strength E. Agility F+. Stamina E. Intelligence E. Mana capacity E. Luck E+. Charm G. Profession. Swordsmanship LVL 2. The degree of understanding of the sword has evolved to the next level. User will find it easier to understand concepts that were previously harder to understand. Martial Manual. Keiki Style Minor Realm of Mastery. Sword art created by Grandmaster Toshimoto Keiki, a 5-star module that focused primarily on reaching the apex of swordsmanship and speed. Upon mastery, the sword art becomes so fast that before an opponent could even think about their next move, their heads would already be rolling on the ground. Ring of Vindication, Minor Realm of Mastery. Highly advanced sword art that creates a perfect ring of defense around the user. Upon mastery, the ring can create a 3-dimensional sphere that protects the user from all sides. Because of the lack of offensive capabilities, the manual was graded 3 stars. Drifting Steps. Movement art that progresses with each step. With every step taken, user speed will increase. Unless user stops, speed will continuously increase until the user either runs out of mana or due to injury. Skills. G Monarch's Indifference. A skill that enables users to erase all emotions and act as a supreme monarch that only calculates the best option regardless of circumstance. No way. My charm, which refused to budge no matter how much I tried to increase it, finally increased from G to G+. Trembling whilst holding my mouth, I couldn't help but choke up. Quickly making my way towards the mirror, I couldn't help but touch my face as I muttered to myself. I really look more handsome. Everything looked pretty much the same, but somehow today I felt incomparably handsome. It looked as though I was shining. Alright, let's get rid of these narcissistic thoughts of mine. After admiring myself in the mirror for a couple of more minutes, I quickly switched back to my serious self. I had a more pressing issue at hand. Now that I've reached E rank, chances of something going wrong during the dungeon raid will definitely decrease, but if things went as I planned, nothing serious should happen. After all, I already knew of a way to avoid all dangers inside of the dungeon. I was going with Kevin. Glancing towards my right, my eyesight landed on the right drawer of my desk where a red book quietly rested. Frowning slightly, I couldn't help but think, since I am with Kevin, this should work. No. Inside of a spacious office room where a large oval table stood in the middle, 14 individuals sat around the table as they stared towards one individual at the front of the table. I say bullshit. Smacking her hand on the large oval table, Donna shouted out loud. How is a 2-week suspension enough to justify what he did to Kevin, someone that the headmaster has personally chosen to nurture? Flinching slightly, one of the professors sitting on the table helplessly raised his hands as he looked at Donna. Donna, the headmaster is not here, and you know, considering Gilbert's background, our hands are tied. Shaking her head, Donna retorted. What does that have to do with anything? Although the headmaster isn't here, even Gilbert's father would have to give a face to him. After all, the headmaster is another SS-ranked hero. Enough. Shouting out loud, a fierce pressure similar to that of Donna erupted from one of the people at the table. Try me. Turning her attention towards the person who released the pressure, Donna's sight met with an older woman with gray hair and wrinkles on her face. Is that how you speak to your elders, Donna? Fiercely staring at Donna in a way that it looked as though she was reproaching a child, the older woman firmly said. The decision has already been set. Stop protesting. Since this is the result of the collective votes of all the people present inside of the room, all you should be doing right now is shut up and endure it. Clenching her fist, Donna pointed at the older woman as she spat. Why, we all know that Gilbert is your nephew. You out of all people shouldn't be talking, Chloe. Chloe Mortz. Though she wasn't related by blood with Gilbert, having married Gilbert's father's cousin, she was considered to be her aunt. Therefore, using some of her connections, she managed to get people on her side and lighten the punishment that Gilbert was going to face for what he did to Kevin. Glancing at Donna, a slight smirk appeared on Chloe's face. Crossing her arms, she pointed towards 9 other people in the room. What does that have to do with anything? Out of the 14 of us here, excluding me, 9 decided for this punishment. Pausing slightly and squinting her eyes, Chloe slowly said, Or are you insinuating that Gilbert is related to all the 9 other people that voted? Yo. Opening her eyes wide, a purple hue erupted from Donna's body as it enveloped the whole room. Donna was so incensed that no words escaped from her mouth. She knew for a fact that Chloe had bribed those 9 individuals present. Using Gilbert's father's name, she either threatened or gave them enough incentives for them to take Gilbert's side. Just what I wanted. Standing up, matching Donna, a blue hue erupted from Chloe's body as it crashed towards Donna's hue. Thereafter, the whole room shook. Both. Please, both of you stop. Just as the confrontation between Donna and Chloe was about to reach a boiling point, shouting out loud, a muscular individual with a large beard and long blonde hair stood up as he got in between the 2 women. Glancing at Donna, Connor Norvac couldn't help but look at her with pleading eyes. Donna, please go outside and cool your head. I will try to talk things through with them. I understand where you're coming from, but in the end, the votes are already out. We can't change the rules because you're dissatisfied with the results. Fuming, Donna glared at Connor for a couple of seconds. Thereafter, seeing that the situation was unfavorable for her, she snorted and turned around. HMPH, fine. Before leaving, hatefully glaring at Chloe, Donna clenched her fist tightly. Soon after, turning around, Donna left the room. As she left the room, she didn't forget to smash the door on the way out as she said, Prepare yourselves for when the headmaster comes back, as I will tell him everything about what happened today. Bang! Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. Have a suggestion? Let me know in the comments.